touch on something you said earlier, which is that if U.S. civilians are killed in Taiwan, then it will force the U.S.'s hand to get involved. Do you think that's true regardless of who the president is at the time?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think what'll happen, and I've seen this before, to a lesser extent, but in Indonesia, when there was a lot of human catastrophe and people being killed in East Timor, not a lot of American citizens, but the political agitation in a case where you've got American citizens and children that potentially on social media and on TV that are blown to pieces. The American public will demand for their elected members to take action. The pressure from Congress and from the American public on any president, Democrat, Republican, Biden, or Trump, is going to be so great that no matter who the president is, their hand's going to be forced. Better to be prepared for that and have a military plan that you can act on. But I can't see a circumstance where American children and elderly and women are being blown up in hospitals and schools or on the street in Taipei, and politically doing nothing or simply slapping sanctions on the Chinese is going to be enough.
So China must know that that would be the U.S. response. Do you think they're taking that into consideration for their calculations? Would that risk of getting involved in a war with the U.S. stop them from attacking Taiwan or even blockading it?
It has so far. I mean, this is why they started building up their military, their navy specifically in the later part of 2000s, like 2006, 8. This is when it starts, and it really takes off last decade. And but the military balance, it's still, they have they have an advantage, a margin. But when you add the Japanese, you add what Taiwan's been doing, you add in the Philippines now with basing rights and also getting serious about their own defense, the overall military advantage is eventually going to turn against them. So this is this sense of urgency in Beijing is like, all right, I have a military advantage, but I don't know how the Americans are going to really respond or the allies in the region. And so there's this question mark over their head. And that has been a deterrent effect since 2015-16 timeframe. It's really an uncertainty. And it really is it's hard to ascertain when what if Xi Jinping wakes up one day and says, you know what, I'm willing to take a risk. His buddy in Moscow did exactly that and completely misjudged what was going to happen in Ukraine. Wars are extremely uncertain things. The Chinese Communist Party is at its core a risk adverse, more math based engineering kind of approach to things. And so if they haven't tested out their theories of victory in some way, they're probably not going to act. And the problem is what seems to have been happening in the last year and happening right now in the South China Sea, and what might be happening in the next few weeks, is them testing their theory of victory. And so we have to be very much aware of that. And that's where I think we are not acting accordingly and maybe sending the wrong signals to Beijing. And that deterrence goes to zero if we're not careful.
There's been a bunch of Chinese military naval exercises in the area around Taiwan over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, I mean, everything seems to be an escalation, but what does this tell you?
Oh, the most notable actually goes back to about a year ago in April, when the province of Fujian, which is just across from Taiwan, announced that they were going to start boarding and inspecting vessels transiting to Taiwan. They ended up not doing it, but they announced their intent. Now, fast forward to March, April of this year, around the island of Kinmen, just off the coast, Taiwan Island, just off the coast of China, they've been interdicting, boarding, inspecting vessels that are Taiwanese. And so they're acting on what they said they were going to do. So it's another clear pattern. And so the tensions and the new behaviors have already started. I look at this as, that first step is being a blockade. They're trying to figure out and refine what that blockade would look like and how the resistance to it might play out. So this informs that too. And these military activities, they all go to refine their planning.
So what should the U.S. be doing in response to this?
Well, the first thing is the White House, the president himself should have actually gotten engaged. And in none of these cases has he. So that's the first thing, is to basically tell Beijing, you got my attention and it's unacceptable. The other thing that has to happen, and this one is a bit mixed, I'd say it's we've been better off on this, and I give it to the leadership, to the Indo-Pacific Command out in Hawaii, responsible for the military forces. And that is to ensure that you have adequate naval, ground, and military forces nearby. And we've been able, for the better part of over the last 2 years, to keep two carrier strike groups in the Western Pacific. That's not an easy thing to do, and we haven't done that in a sustained way before, at least in the last 10, 15 years.
What do you mean it's not an easy thing to do to keep carrier strike groups out in the Pacific?
One is the maintenance schedules and the foresight to plan it so that you maintain that. That's one. So you have it's about a 2 year window of planning to make sure that you have that built into your maintenance schedules. The other thing, and this is where it gets more problematic, military operations and exercises sometimes require you to take the carriers and move them outside. Most notably, the evacuation of Afghanistan. That was a time where we had no carriers for a while in the Western Pacific, again, at a time when tensions were ratcheting up. So political decisions sometimes pop up to drive the Navy, despite best laid plans, to send their ships elsewhere. And so that resistance to political pressure is also very testy. And right now, we see one of those carriers leaving to go to the Middle East.
So the CCP knows this, right? And so it would certainly be at their political advantage if somehow events forced U.S. carrier strike groups to move out of the Pacific and assist with some other operation.
Yes. The question mark is, if they start doing something in East Asia, how quick can the United States disengage and relocate back into Asia? So big exercises are coming. The carrier is sent to the Middle East. Assume nothing happens that keeps it there in the Middle East, and the Chinese ratchet up the pressure and do something a little bit more testy with this big joint exercises coming up in August. They'll be watching to see how quickly we can move our forces back into the Pacific.
Where in the Middle East are these ships? Because, like, are they like Mediterranean, or are they in like the Indian Ocean?
So the ship the carrier strike group that's in question is actually transiting more likely to the Arabian Sea. So it'll be between the India and, but not in the not inside the Persian Gulf, unless it's going in for a port visit.
Okay, so it's not like impossibly far away, but it's definitely many days away at least, right?
7 to 10 days, depending on how they transit.
Hmm. That's actually a long time in this scope of things.
That makes a difference in a war.
When you're 100 miles off the coast of Taiwan, when China is, and then American ships are like
a week away.
A week away.